Hello, a very warm welcome to the first full week of a brand new year with Granada Reports. It's good to be back.
It is indeed. On the programme this evening.
Situation critical. Warnings hospitals in Lancashire and Cumbria are at the highest level of alert because of COVID cases and winter pressures.
My experience with the health service is that it's first class but under a lot of stress.
Kicked out of the RAF for being gay, the campaigner welcoming a government's promise that all people convicted under outdated laws will be pardoned.
The condition that leaves thousands of women in terrible pain every month. Stephanie's struggle with endometriosis.
And then suddenly we got other listeners, and apparently there was 6,000 not long ago.
It might be Tuesday, but Mondays with Millie is a podcast we've all been waiting for.
And the weather might be more like what we expect for January, but some wintry hazards in the forecast over the next few days. Full forecast a little later on.
So lots of reasons to stay with us. First, though, there's a warning tonight. Patients will face long waits after two major NHS trusts declared critical incidents in Lancashire and in Cumbria.
Both the Morecambe Bay NHS Trust and Blackpool Victoria Hospitals said they've had to restrict services and postpone non-urgent operations.
They've now escalated their status to the highest level as a result of a growing demand in services, rising COVID hospital admissions and staff testing positive for coronavirus.
Our correspondent Elaine Wilcox has the latest.
Long waits and tired, overstretched staff. That's the picture being painted inside our hospitals. That's even before what's been described as a tsunami wave of Omicron cases hits.
The next month or a few weeks is going to be really pressured in our system, with cases continuing to increase. We used to have 1,500 cases a day. That's gone up to nearly 3,500 to 4,000 cases a day, particularly in the working age population, which means a lot of people are off work. But we're also starting to see the 60-plus case numbers going up as well.
Two of our trusts have declared critical incidents due to high demand and COVID cases. The Morecambe Bay Trust, which has hospitals in Lancaster, Kendal and Barrow, has postponed non-urgent operations and appointments. That was soon followed by Blackpool Victoria Hospital, which says it's full and staff sickness is at more than 10%. Added to COVID pressures, both trusts are experiencing the impact of bed blocking. The equivalent of 3 wards at the Morecambe Bay Trust are full, with patients fit enough to be discharged.
If you have friends or relatives that are currently in our hospitals that have been deemed fit to go home or fit to their place of residence, please could you make every effort to come and pick them up as early as you can and take them home.
At a critical time for hospital services, health officials say the Omicron variant, which hit the 20s, 30s and 40s age group, has now moved to the over 60s, which will increase the pressure on hospital services at a time when staff say they're already at breaking point. There's been nothing but praise here for staff as they brace themselves for even more pressure in the weeks ahead.
Well, everything's calm, very professional as far as I can see. No evident panic. So we just got to get on with it, haven't you?
It's been fine. I've been 2 or 3 times in the past and it's been as good this time.
My experience with the health service is that it's first class but under a lot of stress.
Elaine Wilcox, ITV News, Blackpool.
Yes, a worrying picture. We spoke to Dr. David Levy, the medical director for the NHS in the North West. I began by asking him whether the NHS in the North West has reached crisis points.
Certainly it's not in crisis. It is now under some significant pressure. And this is all down to the Omicron variant that has come through in the last 4-6 weeks. It was originally in the southeast and around London, but has now moved north. And what we've seen is a rapid rise in the number of infections, both within the community. And that's it. It resulted in more patients with COVID coming into our hospitals, but also a significant number of our staff have also gone down with COVID as well.
So significant pressures within the North West at present. We are not currently in a crisis, but how long do you think it would be before you would say that we're in serious trouble?
It really is a very rapidly changing situation at the moment. If we'd had this conversation 2 weeks ago, we might have talked about the fact that we had maybe 700 patients in our hospitals in the Northwest, and now it's over 2,000. We're already aware from colleagues in London that they seem to be reaching a peak. So we're probably going to have a challenging time for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then hopefully we'll be in a position where the numbers will start falling once again.
2 major NHS trusts within the region have declared a critical incident. How concerned should our viewers be this evening about staff shortages?
Just perhaps I might fill them in first of all about what a critical incident is. This is an internal critical incident, which is a normal form of escalation within the NHS, where actions need to be taken to ensure patients receive the appropriate care. And it's a call for not just those who work within that particular organisation, but those working around there, the whole system to come together. It's something that happens every winter in a number of different hospitals. So I think the public just need to be aware that, as we described earlier, the NHS in the Northwest is under pressure.
And we know that some NHS trusts are having to postpone some non-emergency procedures, but treatments for life-threatening conditions, what's happening to those, Doctor?
So those are continuing to happen, and it's really, really important that your viewers recognise that the NHS remains open.
And just finally, Dr. Levy, to our viewers at home, what would your overall message to them be as we head into this very critical period?
Please try and ensure that you've been fully vaccinated and had that vital booster to reduce the risk of you coming into hospital. But be aware of the high community rates, and that means wearing a mask, washing your hands, and being appropriate distancing. And the final message I wanted to give was very much the members of the NHS who are working so incredibly hard, just to say thank you so very much. They are doing a truly brilliant job during a very difficult time. And I just wanted to thank them for that, despite the tremendous pressures they're working under at present.
Dr. David Levy, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and the very best of luck to you and your colleagues in this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and of course we'll be following any developments on that. Moving on tonight, though, and a leading campaigner for LGBT plus people in our region says that the government should consider paying compensation to people who have a criminal record for being gay.
Yeah, Carl Austin-Bean was speaking after the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says she would ensure a pardon for all people convicted for their sexuality under now outdated laws.
Yeah, Carl advises the Greater Manchester Mayor on LGBT plus issues. He himself was discharged from the RAF as recently as 1997 for being gay.
He's been speaking to Tim Scott.
It's become a much-loved and welcome fixture in the calendar. The scale and success of Manchester's Pride Festival, more proof of the LGBT plus community's vital contribution to society. And today, good news for the community from central government. They're extending their disregards and pardon scheme, which means anyone with convictions for consensual same-sex activity can have their criminal record wiped for good.
It just makes sense, really, because the laws have already been abolished anyway. So it's about the fact of just moving on with the times, and the fact that before, you know, you've been able to sort of get these sort of pardoned in the past, but it just makes it so much easier, the fact that it's being done automatically.
Carl Austin-Bean was Manchester's first openly gay Lord Mayor and is now an LGBT plus spokesperson for Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham.
Carl, you welcome this announcement today, but you still think more could and should be done?
I think there's some people that do need compensating, and I think there's people out there that need to actually have that recompense.
Having the lives ruined?
For having the lives ruined, yeah, and for going to prison when they shouldn't, because there was no need for it at all.
Regarding the new rules, Home Secretary Priti Patel said it's only right that where offences have been abolished, convictions for consensual activity between same-sex partners should be disregarded too. While Carl wasn't convicted for having same-sex relations, in 1997 he was thrown out of the RAF for being gay and no longer allowed to wear his Medal for Bravery. That was overturned last year, but he knows all too well what damage such repressive rules can do to a person's life and career.
I lost everything. I lost my friends, I lost my job, obviously, I lost my home. And the weird thing is, even though I knew it was illegal to be gay, to go in the armed forces, I didn't want being gay to define me. However, because of being thrown out the armed forces and because of the passion that I had for it and the passion I've got for equality, it has defined me.
Carl has undoubtedly moved on from what happened to him, and it's hoped that the new rules around convictions for being gay will mean that no one else will be criminalised or have their lives ruined for simply loving somebody of the same gender. Tim Scott, ITV News, Manchester.
In other news today, and mountain rescue teams in Cumbria say they've had their busiest ever year last year and have described the Christmas week as absolute chaos. One search for a missing father and son took more than 19 hours and involved 75 team members. The pair were safely found.
Yeah, so please think of them before you set off walking. That would be helpful. Right, now many women struggle on in silence with a very painful condition known as endometriosis.
Yeah, it is a disease where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside the organ, causing extreme pain and sometimes infertility.
Yeah, Stephanie Ormisher from the Isle of Man says it took doctors 12 years to diagnose her. She'd had multiple examinations and tests, which began when she was just 10 years old.
To raise awareness of the condition, she's been speaking to our Isle of Man reporter, Joshua Stokes.
It's a condition that affects 1 in 10 women in the UK. And while the cause is unknown, the effects can be devastating. For Stephanie, this is a good day. But with a condition like endometriosis, everyday activities can be far more challenging.
I can wake up one day and I can be okay and the pain be tolerable, and I can wake up another day and the pain be unbearable and have to stay in bed or not be able to go to work.
Stephanie started going to the doctors aged 10 with intense pelvic pain, but she wasn't diagnosed with the condition until 2020, 12 years later.
There's not enough known about endometriosis, so I didn't get the right treatment when I should have because I wasn't diagnosed. It's very disheartening when you're suffering and you don't know what's wrong with you, or you feel like you're being told it could be in your head. That's what it feels like if nothing's being investigated.
As a result, Stephanie had to travel overseas for an operation, something the island's hospital describes as a last resort. In a statement, they said, "In situations where endometriosis is more complex and extensive, Manx Care refers to the specialist tertiary centres at Liverpool Women's or St Mary's Hospital in Manchester. And it's there where further treatment can be prioritised."
We try and offer a one-stop shop and try and do as many things as we can, whether we can organise things locally with the help of their GP, so transvaginal ultrasound scan or an MRI scan locally, or we try and combine that when they visit us to try and combine a few tests.
And what would you say to someone who thinks they may have endometriosis?
I'd say certainly go and see a GP. Raise awareness, say you've heard about it, it's cyclical, you think it is endometriosis. I mean, you might even have to mention that you believe it is endometriosis because it's associated with your periods, just to give general, awareness that you are aware of the situation.
Last year, a parliamentary report found most women have to wait around 8 years before receiving a diagnosis, all at a crucial time of childhood development, something Stephanie is hoping to change.
Patients need to feel like they're being listened to in order for patients to actually go, especially at the age of 10 or, teenage years. You need to be able to feel like you're being listened to in order to want to go in the first place.
And that's what specialists are now encouraging, hoping to give some much-needed respite to those suffering for so long. Joshua Stokes, ITV News in the Isle of Man.
Here's what's still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Mary.
I'll be bringing you the very latest on the spread of Omicron. The Prime Minister tries to lessen the threat to essential services by requiring some workers to take tests daily. Meanwhile, the pressure on the NHS mounts as hospitals declare critical incidents. Also tonight, the courtroom showdown between Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre's lawyers in New York. And the remarkable story of the twins born just 15 minutes apart, but who'll be celebrating birthdays in different years. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Gorgeous,
I was going to say, they're so cute. They're so
They
cute.
are.
Makes me emotional. Next, to split or not to split. For many, today is the first day back at work after a happy and peaceful break. But for many couples, that extended period is the final straw. And amongst some lawyers, the first working day after New Year is known as Divorce Day.
Yeah, not a very cheerful subject, I know, but by now the pressure on relationships has often reached a point where one or both partners feel they simply can't go on. Georgina Chase is a solicitor in Manchester, and she told me why Christmas pushes so many couples to breaking point.
Well, I think Christmas is a time for reflection, and a new year, new start means that people are assessing their lives. We've had another year like no other, and the pandemic has certainly created a pressure cooker environment, and lots of issues in relationships have been intensified, and people are deciding now to press that divorce button.
Well, divorce is much easier than it used to be, I suppose, but it is still a very painful process, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's not a decision to be taken lightly. We've got the introduction of the no-fault divorce coming in on the 6th of April of this year, which will see the blame game ended. Now, instead of relying on 5 facts, it'll be replaced with a statement of irretrievable breakdown, and also the option to make a joint application to divorce. So we're seeing a new law. And we are seeing potential for a lot less conflict in what is already a very difficult decision.
There are people watching tonight, though, who maybe think that that makes it too easy.
Well, solicitors have been lobbying for the no-fault divorce to be introduced, because less conflict means then the potential for more agreement, less hostility, better for all involved, particularly children. Certainly the emotional damage upon children can last into adulthood as a result of parents' divorce.
What advice would you give to a couple when they're worried that they are staying together simply because of children, but they're worried that the children will be really damaged by them breaking up?
I see this a lot. I think a lot of people decide to stay in an unhappy marriage because of children and potentially the stigma of divorce. However, I also see that once people have made that decision and they have got through the process, they realise that their children were probably unhappier because they were staying within a household where there was constant fighting and bickering. And actually, children, once they have a right to relationship with both parents, and as long as they can move fluidly between both parents, they're just happy that mum and dad are happy.
I mean, you must despair sometimes about people fighting over their children and even their pets.
Pets is a more common issue because for many people who don't have children, pets are like children, and it's a case of who's going to get the dog at the end of the separation. And most importantly, they need to keep lines of communication open and discuss any issues, because it's not all doom and gloom. People do reconcile and people do work at the marriage, and for a lot of people, lockdown has actually has improved relationships because they've got time together that they would never usually have.
Yeah, time to drive each other up the wall as well if things aren't going too well. If you had to give someone thinking of picking up the phone to make that first step towards a split, maybe a close friend of yours, what advice would you give them, Georgina?
I would say there's no substitute for taking independent legal advice. So even if you just have an initial consultation with a lawyer to know your options, you can then make some informed decisions. I would also say avoid social media, avoid denigrating your ex to in front of friends or of course your children, and make sure that you don't listen to other people, because no divorce is the same. Every case is unique, and do it with dignity, do it with respect. How you act now is obviously going to have long-term implications on your family as a whole, and particularly your children.
Well, Georgina Chase, let's hope for a lot of people it is a happy new year. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, we've saved the start of the show till the very end.
Yeah, suddenly it seems everyone's doing podcasts. How many 90-year-olds, though? Stand by to meet Doreen Connolly from St Anne's. You're going to love her. At 90, Doreen has been happily recording and broadcasting her own podcast.
Yeah, it's already attracting a worldwide audience, and it's called Mondays with Millie. Paul Crone went to her home in St Anne's to find out why it's not called Mondays with Doreen.
At the age of 90 and almost totally blind, Doreen Connolly enjoys life to the max. You might say she's a cup half full sort of lady. To prove that, she's just finished recording her 66th and final podcast called Mondays with Millie, chronicling her life so far.
I'm Doreen, born in Moss Side, Manchester, February 1931. A sigh is just a sigh.
It was just meant for the family. And then suddenly we got other listeners, and apparently there were 6,000 not long ago from 27 different countries. Can you believe that?
The project is the brainchild of her son-in-law who lives in Melbourne, Australia, with Doreen's daughter Kirsten and their family. The affection for Doreen, who he nicknamed Millie, short for mother-in-law, hence Mondays with Millie, was as clear as our chat down under this morning.
She's had me in awe of her life story over many, many years, and I think people of her generation really are the greatest generation because they've seen so much change in their lifetime.
I think it did wonders for my memory, and it was quite amazing what I could remember.
Doreen has flown to Oz 9 times to see her family, but because of COVID, that just isn't happening at present, and the podcasts have become a lifeline for everyone.
Oh, it's helped enormously because I won't say I was depressed, but I was quite lonely, and especially when the first lockdown came and people were, you were having to, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, oh, you mustn't go out. Nothing to do with the fact that my eyesight wasn't too good. It was, oh, no, you must keep away from people.
And in this podcast series, I interview my 89-year-old mother-in-law, Doreen, who I affectionately call Millie, about her ordinary life and the extraordinary events which influenced it.
So Doreen, take a bow. She's such a star with a golden voice and personality to match that I'm sure we haven't heard the last of her. Paul Crone, ITV News, St Anne's.
Yeah, Doreen. Mondays with Millie is available via your regular podcast provider. What a wonderful woman she is. Now, the weather. Here's Kerry with the details.
He's cooked up a storm and now he's going to scrape the fat into the bin instead of the sink. My guy.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Hang on, was that fish?
Hello, very good evening to you. Definitely a change in weather type across the northwest today. For many of you, very much like Mary Hines, it was sunny in St Helens, but we also had a little bit of snowfall overnight last night, and it's definitely feeling colder for all. Now we stick with that cold, brisk north to northwest wind overnight tonight. Still some winter sunshine in store as we head into Wednesday, but under those clearer skies, frost and ice by night. So as we head into Wednesday, dry, clear and cold for many. We have got an area of rain, slightly milder air pushing its way into the colder air for the middle part of Thursday. So there could be some hill snow, then turning to rain quite quickly, and then behind that a really cold blast of blustery air from the west, and that will bring us some weather warnings for the end of the week on Friday, snow showers and icy stretches. Overnight tonight, still some snow showers for the Isle of Man coming down over the North Wales hills and pushing into parts of Merseyside and Cheshire, and therefore the risk of some icy stretches. The further north and east, the drier, colder and clearer conditions, so frosty for many by dawn. 8:28 and 4:05 are your sun times. Now there will be a few showers again in the south and west of the region first thing in the morning, but they tend to fizzle out for all, so a better day for the Isle of Man, and for all of us, dry, clear and cold. Temperatures struggling on the thermometer, 5 or 6, feeling colder than that, and over the mountain tops there will be a little bit of lying snow perhaps, and definitely some frosty conditions. So widespread frost tomorrow night, maybe lows of -6, -7, and into that cold air, that area of rain. On the leading edge there'll be some hill snow, and then behind it blustery snow showers and icy stretches for Friday.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Bob! Amy!
Tomorrow we meet Mia the cat from Salford, who is so clever that videos of her online have been seen almost 200 million times on social media.
Yeah, we did say 200 million. Can't wait to watch that. Very good night.
The dog will be watching.